Good morning, everyone, and it is my special pleasure to be back here at NeosCon and welcome you all to the first talk at our studio stage. I always look forward to the talks we have, obviously, from our community, but as a long-term community member, you also want to hear from outside the community, obviously. It's always interesting to get perspectives from the outside into our community here. Therefore, our organizational team struggles every year to find external speakers that are interested in coming here and talking to us. And so with that, I am very happy to introduce our first external speaker, origami master extraordinaire, not faced by any technical issues that might arise during the talk, head of developer relations at Mitwald, Martin Helmich.
Thank you so much, Christian. Can I get my presenter notes on the monitor? Still seeing Christian's notes. Hello, my name is Martin. Nice to see you all. In the past, I've opened talks like this, talking about my job and what I do, and I thought this time around I'd switch it up and maybe open with a maybe a little lesser known fact about myself, which is that for the past 5 years, I've been building up my own woodworking shop in my home. This is my most recent project. Probably it takes a little bit of imagination to see it, but that's eventually going to become a desk. Over there in the back, you can see the tabletop, and in the front, that's what's going to become the legs. And actually, I took this photo when I started preparing this session. I took these photos last weekend, so that is the finished product. I'm particularly proud of these mitered half-lap joints, so I'm particularly proud of that. And obviously, that is not what I'm supposed to be talking about at all. I'm supposed to be talking about AI. But there's a point that I want to make, so please give me 5 more minutes and stay with me, because I'm seeing some parallels over there. But what fascinates me about woodworking is how old that craft actually is. So people have been building stuff out of wood since, I think earliest evidence goes back 400,000 years. Please let that number sink in. Or pause for dramatic effect. So please let that number sink in. This is a mural from the grave of an Egyptian dude who lived like 3,300 years ago. And I want you to pay attention to that saw he's using, because you can still buy that exact same saw today. Obviously, we have better materials, we have better manufacturing quality, but in principle, that is a panel saw that you still use today for specific kinds of rip cuts through wood, which is exactly what he's doing over there. So, millennia, same tool. Obviously, that's only half of the truth, because if you're looking at how carpentry has changed over the millennia, which is weird at an IT conference talking about how a craft has changed over centuries, which is all very new and uncommon for us. Obviously, carpentry has seen so many technological disruptions. There was metalworking, there was the steam machine, there was electricity. Now there's a big online debate if you can still consider yourself a woodworker if you're using CNC machines, which is like a whole new discussion. And in truth, you seldomly use hand tools like this anymore. Like, if you're doing modern woodworking, most of the cuts you're going to be doing are probably being done with a tool like this, modern track saw or a table saw or any kind of power tool. And this is also how I got into the hobby. All these hand tools, they take lots of years of practice and repetition, and to be actually able to use them precisely to get the precision in results that you want. And modern power tools make this very, very easy. So basically, and I didn't have I don't have any kind of formal training in carpentry whatsoever. So basically just a bit of YouTube and let's get going. So you might see what kind of parallel I'm drawing here, because I basically just bought a bunch of expensive tools that allowed me to get quick results in a graph that I had no idea how to do it at all. And modern tools make it very, very easy to get precise results very quickly without ever having learned, the long way of how to use all these hand tools and so on. That's one part. And obviously, I think we can see a parallel to how AI is changing, our craft. But what's also important is there are still things you need to know. Even if you're using power tools in woodworking, you still need to, first of all, you need to know what to build. No one can take that away from you. And you also need to know the foundations of how the material that you're working with actually behaves. You need to know about wood movement, how wood expands and shrinks with the seasons. And if you don't consider that, you're going to end up with a table that might look like this. So there's still human knowledge involved, which you also need to know about when you're using power tools. And this is the parallel that I'm going to be drawing. And obviously, carpentry has changed immensely over the past 1,000 years. We've seen industrialization, because who's still able to afford, like a hand-built dining table from a carpenter for, 20,000 euros? For most people, that's once in a lifetime purchase, if at all. So that obviously has changed. Most people just buy their furniture from IKEA or whatnot. But it still gives me a little bit of confidence and comfort and hope that maybe my profession isn't going just, disappear completely, but there's still some essence of it that will remain for me as a human to do. So that was my intro. Now let's talk about AI. Why am I talking about AI? I've been working with different kind of AI integrations, especially in the CMS bubble for, I think, most part of the last year. This is a photo that I took in, I think, last July. This was the first NVIDIA graphics card that entered the Midwell data center. This was not even a year ago, and a few months ago we already took it out of production again because it's already outdated again, which opens up a whole new host of possible questions you could ask about how sustainable that entire business is at all, but I'm not going to go too much into that. My point is that offering AI services put me into contact with a lot of developers from all kinds of different CMS systems and the agency business, and I get the privilege to see what these people are building using AI. And that's what I'm going to be framing this talk about. And I thought, because this is a NEOS conference, let's start by having a look what's happening in other parts of the world. Because I've also spent a lot of time with Drupal AI. I'm a WordPress plugin author nowadays, which, if anyone considers that as a secondary career, can recommend. I'm involved in the Typo 3 community. So let's have a look at what all these different kind of CMS projects have in common and what challenges they face when it comes to AI. This is a screenshot that I took from any random WordPress plugin. Don't even remember the name, don't remember what it does. If you look in the WordPress plugin directory, there is more than 1,000 plugins that are tagged with AI. More than 1,000. And this is a random one of them. And each one of these 1,000 plugins ships with its own setting screen that looks more or less like this. And if you install 5 of them, you get 5 of these different setting screens. And obviously, what as an infrastructure provider bugs me is, well, all right, you can choose your AI vendor, and this is of course a little bit self-serving, but obviously it bugs me that Midwell customers can't select, Midwell as an AI provider in there. But this is also suboptimal for the users of these plugins, because if you have, I don't know, 5 different AI plugins, you have 5 different AI vendor connections that you need to configure. Maybe they don't even all support the same vendors, so maybe you even have to go to different vendors to get the AI features that you need. This is obviously a UX nightmare. This is also a pain for developers, because developers have to, I don't know, ship connectors to all these different AI providers and maintain them all. And that is actually, I chose WordPress as an example, but that is a common problem that all CMS projects have. So this is gonna get a little bit technical. So I'm using an example, a synthetic CMS, which I've chosen to call Drupal 3. And what we're seeing is in all of these CMS communities, we have a plugin ecosystem that tends to move faster than the CMS core itself. You know, we had 1,000 WordPress AI plugins before any kind of AI feature entered the WordPress core. Typo 3, same thing. Joomla, same thing. Neos, same thing. And I think this is normal, because the CMS cores tend to move very deliberately, because they have to, whatever they build, they need to support for a long time. I think Typo 3 release, the support cycle is, I think, 8 or 9 years. So whatever they're building now, they still need to support in 2035 or whatever. So they're moving very deliberately on that. And obviously, there's a solution strategy to solve this problem. So what I've seen many CMS projects doing is moving all that provider integration features into the CMS core, which is what Drupal has been doing for years, which WordPress has been doing since WordPress 7, which Typo 3 aimed to do with Typo 3 version 14, but they didn't make the feature freeze deadline, so guess we'll see each other in another 18 months. So basically, the strategy is for the CMS to provide a built-in abstraction layer over all these AI APIs, so that plugin or module or extension authors or whatever you're going to call it have a unified interface to program against, which makes it easier for plugin authors, because there's only one interface to develop your AI extension against, which also makes it better for users, because users can choose a single AI provider, configure that connection once, and then stop thinking about it, and all plugins just use that configured connection. And obviously, also makes it easier for me as a provider, because I don't have to knock on the door of 1,000 plugin authors and kindly ask him, would you please add Midwald as an AI provider? And then they're going to tell me no, because they don't know who I am. Now I can just provide a single WordPress plugin, a single Drupal plugin to offer this connectivity and make AI connectivity easier for the users. This is a screencast from the Drupal backend. I'll just quickly see how they've chosen to solve it, where you basically have a setting screen where you can set up different AI providers and then have a set of different AI tools that you can use that all build on that common interface. Those are often simple things like image classification or integration into the editor for text generations or guardrails to protect user data or so. This same thing, WordPress backend. Any Drupal or WordPress users here, by the way? Please raise your hand, don't be ashamed. Just want to know on how many toes I'm stepping. WordPress, same thing, they have that central setting screen, and then they're calling it AI experiments that you can enable, which is also a very important thing to note, that all of these AI API integrations, those are developer features. Because if you're looking on LinkedIn and everyone's saying, oh, WordPress is finally gone AI native, and now we finally have AI in WordPress. No, you don't. It's a developer feature. It's an API that you can use to build your plugin on. So hold your horses, LinkedIn. But then again, this is a sensible first step to, bring at least some semblance of order to that settings screen's chaos that I showed earlier. This is a screenshot from Joomla. Joomla also have AI plugins that, do all this. Please change the tone of voice for that particular section of text thingy. Typo 3 has chosen a different solution strategy because Drupal and WordPress basically have done their own thing. They basically reinvented the whole AI API abstraction layer entirely for themselves. And they can because they have big developer communities who actually have the capacity to do that. And the Typo 3 project decided to join forces with the Symfony project, and the result of that was the Symfony AI plugin, which of course also benefits the larger PHP ecosystem as a whole. So any kind of CMS project that builds or uses Symfony could potentially also use this integration. And Symfony AI also does a lot of standardization. It also follows the same architectural pattern, where you have, they're calling it different AI platforms, where you can basically have your own composer package that hooks into Symfony AI and handles all that provider-specific glue code to talk to whichever provider's API. So same architecture as we've seen before. They also offer standardized interfaces to build your own AI agents. We're going to get to those in a minute. And also, like the basic stuff, chat interfaces, abstraction over OpenAI's chat API, abstraction over vector stores if you want to build a RAG system. I think there's also a talk about vector search later today. That is all abstracted away by Symfony AI. Now, there's one thing that I'd like to talk about, which may be contentious. So if you have a different opinion about that, please come find me afterwards, and we can discuss it. Can discuss it over a coffee or a beer this evening. Many of these features that we're seeing are, like basic text generation and text editing capabilities. And what I'm thinking is, my operating system also already does that. So if I just want to, change the tone of voice of this section or so, macOS already does that, Windows already does that. So what's the point of? My question was, what is the point of having these basic text editing functionalities rebuilt and rebuilt and rebuilt for each CMS if it's become commoditized by your operating system anyway? Especially considering the fact that, I don't know about you guys, but every time I'm talking to editors or also CMS integrators, I'm learning that most of content generation and authoring doesn't happen within the CMS anyway. I'm seeing nodding in the room. I think the pinnacle of irony is, if I want to publish an article on typo3.org, please let that sink in, on typo3.org, I write that in a Google Doc. I author that in a Google Doc and then hand it off to the typo3.org content team for them to just basically proofread it and then copy-paste it into some Typo3 backend. And if content authoring, well, to be fair, it's called content management system and not content authoring system, so it's all fair. But if content authoring isn't done in the CMS, why do we need all these fancy content generation AI plugins? So my hypothesis is, and this is the contentious part, is that all these that many of these content generation features, I think they might turn out to be a dead end. But if you have a different opinion on that, please let's talk afterwards. I'd be interested to hear that. This is the general trend that I'm seeing regarding AI integrations into CMS. In the last year, we've seen lots of these simple and easy Gen AI integrations into CMS. Generate an image for blah, 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 generate a text for whatever. Please generate alt text for these thousands of images, which is a whole another issue, which I could have a separate talk about, if that makes sense or not. And I think what has more potential is if you're looking into the direction of agentic AI and see how the CMS, different CMS projects can integrate themselves into agentic environment. Just a quick recap what I mean by that. If we're talking about agentic AI, we're typically talking about AI systems that implement complex workflows, complex chains of thoughts, which also can divide labor among themselves, and which can call tools autonomously. So Robert in his keynote already talked about MCP a bit, so you probably have a sense of where I'm going with this. But there's also other solutions. For example, Drupal AI has its own completely separate AI agent framework built within the Drupal core, which they, for example, use for content modeling. They have a content type agent, and you can chat with that content type agent to support you in content modeling, which is also a very neat feature, I think. Depending on which model you use, some tend to ask more questions back to you than others, and maybe you want that, maybe not. And then you can follow the chain of thought of that agent. You can see which tools it called. For example, the Drupal content type agent has a tool, create a content type, but, well, obviously. And what's also nice about all these Drupal AI agents is that they can call each other as tools. So one agent may come to the decision to delegate one task to another agent, which allows you to implement really complex agentic workflows within the CMS itself. But then again, next contentious opinion, and again, you're welcome to question me on that, is that actually the right way? Does it make sense to talk about should you integrate your AI into your CMS? Also, what we've also seen over the last few years is where those built-in AI assistant where you had an AI chat window inside your application to help you with, I don't know, stuff. Should we talk about bringing AI into your CMS, or should we have a look at it the other way around, like maybe rather integrating your CMS into the AI assistant or AI agent that you're maybe already using? And depending on which CMS you're using, which interfaces you're using, that may look differently. I had a look at the Drupal content type agent, and I had a thought about how you could implement the same thing with Neos. And my thing was that Neos, in my opinion, actually has a very good starting position in that, because if you're looking at content modeling in Neos, it's all just YAML files. It's all code. It's all you define node types. Those are just code files in your file system. So I tried content modeling using, a plain old coding agent. And turns out that actually works quite well. This is an example using OpenCode. I've grown to like OpenCode because it's open source and you can use it with any kind of AI model that you want. And I've had mixed results with that, because you have to find an AI model that actually knows how Neos content types work. But then again, you also can kind of try to correct against that by adding skills to your AI agent where you explain how content types work and make it smarter that way. And that actually gives really good results if you instruct it correctly, and then we're just back to basic prompt engineering. And if that's not enough, then, well, Robert already mentioned MCP in its keynote, so you probably guessed where I'd be going with that. Just a quick recap for anyone who's not familiar with the protocol. It's basically a protocol where you can make tool calling from any kind of application available to your AI agent. And I also did some experiment with the Neos MCP server from Kaufmann Digital. And I was wondering, can we use that to, I don't know, maybe bootstrap a complete site with content structure? and so on. So I installed that and just prompted it to initialize my site structure for, I don't know, random company. You know, which is basically the same thing that all these AI site builders build your site from one prompt products are doing that are sprouting out of thin air right now. And I've also had good results with that, which is also like a caveat when doing MCP, because that Neos MCP server, I think it exposes only like 2 or 3 tools, which is find node and create node. So you're basically relying on your AI model to figure out on its own what to do with those 2 tool calls. But then again, that is also something that you can counteract by just instructing it using prompting, using skills, and make it better that way. In this example, you can also see that on occasion the AI agent just decides to just use the Neos CLI instead to see what node types are available and so. And yeah, well, turns out that actually produced a more or less usable site. It didn't know about dimensions, so I only got the English version, and there was a German dimension configured, and the agent just ignored that entirely. But I think that also could be fixed with prompting. So we're basically able to tackle CMS automation from 2 sides. We can tackle the integrator side, content modeling, and everything that you need to be doing as a developer or as an integrator. And we can also tackle the editor side of it. And I think this is also an interesting perspective for, I don't know how many agencies I've talked with who've made some kind of business model out of, oh, my customer has to call me if they want to have a heading changed somewhere, and then I bill them 3 hours of work for that, which, I don't know, kind of defeats the point of having a CMS in the first place, but apparently some agencies have made a business model out of that. And I think having AI agents doing the same thing could possibly present a danger to that kind of business model, or make it less sustainable for agencies. So that's possibly something to need to be aware of. So to wrap it up, each and every CMS project has basically some kind of MCP initiative, be it first party in the core, be it third party by an extension. They're all calling it a little bit differently. Drupal is calling it, what Drupal is calling tools, WordPress is calling abilities, but still it's the same thing, just in a different shade of blue. Then I have been talking about MCP a lot. There's already buzz about MCP being on its way out of the door again, because all of these standards are moving so incredibly fast. So next thing supposedly is the Universal Tool Calling Protocol, or short UTCP, which is not cause for any kind of confusion at all if you're familiar with network protocols or so. So we'll see what's going to happen in that area. There's already buzz about protocols like A2AP, agent-to-agent protocol, for AI agents to coordinate with each other. And the question that remains is, how does this change how we interact with our systems? And again, the provocative question would be, do we still even need a backend for a CMS if people are just using AI agents to do everything? My guess on that question would be yes, for most things. But the simple please change your heading on page blah 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 use case without wanting to bother how to use the UX, the UI of my CMS. Maybe AI agents will just do all that for us in the future. That also made me think about all these AI website builders. I was at a WordPress conference a few months ago. I got the impressions that the WordPress folks are in a full-on panic mode because they have all these build your website from a single prompt products cropping up, which is more or less, and I think WordPress sees themselves as the first victim of those. But we can have that too with open source tools. Because if we put everything, all the agentic integrations that we've just looked at together, we're really not that far from that same build me a website from a single prompt experience, just by cobbling a few MCP servers together. I forgot to adjust this slide. This is a typo 3 specific slide. I apologize for that. Please don't hurt me. I want to come back. But we have the same options with Neos, right? Just cobble whatever MCP servers and whatever agentic skills we need together, and we can have that same prompt discussion experience that you have with all these commercial website builder products. We can also have that in our own open source ecosystems if we wanted. So yeah, basically that's the same thing. Trying to tie the knot back to my woodworking experience. It may look scary, but if we embrace all that, I think we can make it our own and make it work with open source. How much time do I have left? 12 minutes. Okay, gonna be. Might need to skip a few slides. What's important for me? Obviously, this is a little bit of self-serving. Gonna make that final twist to everyone's writing digital sovereignty on their product data sheet, and all these standardized interfaces that we've been talking about are also a big part of digital sovereignty. So whenever I'm looking at any kind of AI-heavy software that I'm using, I'm always looking for this one setting where I can change the API endpoint that I'm talking to, which in most cases will probably default to openai.com, and I see if I can change it to any other value, to a European vendor, or to maybe I'm just running the whole thing by myself on my own machine. Someone I know just told me that they've just invested into a maxed out Mac Studio to just run everything on their own machine, and then I nearly got a heart attack when I learned how expensive these things have gotten, like $12,000 or whatever. But then again, you've paid for 512 gigs of RAM, so you can also use 512 gigs of RAM. And this kind of API flexibility is also a big part of what affords you digital sovereignty. Because I think if we're talking about digital sovereignty, there's one thing that many people might get wrong. Because if you're looking at all these marketing slides and every vendor who advertises themselves as, oh, we are digitally sovereign, I got the impression many people are interpreting digital sovereignty as we're deciding not being dependent on a US vendor any longer, and so we're going to get dependent on a European vendor. That is not digital sovereignty, right? You're just as dependent as you were before, just to a different kind of vendor. Real digital sovereignty is if you can choose and change your vendor whenever you feel like it, whenever you, I don't know, decide for geopolitical reasons, or because you decide you don't like their particular shade of corporate blue that they're using in their logo, go somewhere else. And all of these standardizations that we've talked about, all these standardized interfaces, the de facto API standard that OpenAI has created, those are a big part of that, because those open interfaces afford us just that. So I named this talk AI is Eating Your CMS, and probably I should have been naming it Why AI is Not Eating All of Your CMS, because obviously we could open the foundational discussion of is CMS dead, which I've heard too often to get into now. CMS has been dying for, I don't know, 10 years and it's still alive. Just like PHP has been dying since over 15 years and it's still around. In German, totgesagte Leben länger. I don't know how to translate that into idiomatic English. Yeah. Um, so I think it's obvious that we're still going to be needing CMS in the future. But I think there are maybe, take all of this with a grain of salt. This is personal opinion. Don't quote me too authoritatively on that. I think what we're maybe going to be seeing less of in the future is, all these basic AI features in CMS, content generation, and I've already talked about why I think that's a dead end. I also don't know what future these built-in AI assistants have, because obviously networked agents that cooperate with each other maybe have more potential. And probably what we're also going to be seeing less of is these basic coding tasks, glue code to integrate one system with another, or build me an HTML template or a Fluid template that does blah, because coding agents have gotten really good at that. But what I think where CMS is still going to be strong is if we're talking about the whole agentic experience of how AI agents interact with our platforms, which is also what Robert talked about earlier this morning. I've also had that same interesting conversation with Tom Cranston about machine experience, about how machines perceive our websites. So that is a whole new area of work that we're opening up for ourselves on that. And also, which is not so much talked about, is how we can use CMSs to establish content trust. How can we decide which content that we're delivering to users is trustful? How to provide provenance, so to provide an audit trail on who authored what particular piece of content to verify authenticity and whatnot. That's not talked so much about right now, but I think that question is going to become bigger. And of course, CMS platforms also still help provide all kind of content governance as to who gets to edit what and who edited what at which point in time. And that's not going to go away. And this is also a part of what's still yours, or still ours as humans, as developers, as editors. So maybe we're using AI assistance on that, but if we're talking about things like governance, orchestrating agents across different systems, or just basic content modeling. I've shown you we can use AI to assist with that, but the ultimate judging factor in that is still going to be you, because you have a customer, and you probably have a customer who values interacting with a human and having someone on the other side who understands what you're talking about as a customer. So I think there's still a big human factor in that. Right. Again, take it with a grain of salt. That's personal opinion. Happy to discuss it further. This is me. This is my contact. This is my, I don't know where that QR code is going. No, that's not my LinkedIn. You're going to find me online if you have any questions. I'm still around for the entire 2 days. So if you disagree with any of the contentious hypotheses I've put out there, please grab me tonight, have a beer with me, and tell me where I'm wrong. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin, for this inspiring talk. I think we all got interesting experiences and perspectives from that. We actually have one question.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Damn, it's a personal opinion question.
Ooh.
Oh. So
I can answer whatever I want and can't be wrong.
Exactly. Do you think a CMS should provide a Swiss Army knife API for AI, or multiple dedicated ones for specific tasks, or just a framework for developing custom integrations for a specific project?
Ooh. Well, the typical consultant answer to that would be it depends, which is, I know, is a cheap answer, which I'm just giving to buy myself some time to think about it. But I think it actually depends on the kind of project that you want to be implementing, because I'm also seeing like a whole different kind of spectrum of projects that are built with CMS projects. You have, like the small end of projects where you require a high degree of standardization, where every hour that you put into it is 1 hour too much. So I think these kind of projects benefit from standardized APIs. And then you have, those big enterprise and platform transformation projects where, money is not an object, where you have a high degree of customization. And I think on that end of the spectrum, you're going to be talking about individual and custom-built solutions that integrate probably into very specific agentic workflows that specific customer has. So I don't know if that's an answer to the question, but
it depends.
It
I think that
depends.
makes sense.
TLDR, it depends.
We have another question by this time. Is it true that the lifespan of an NVIDIA graphics card under full load in a data center is approximately a year?
I wouldn't know, actually. Most of our cards are younger than that, and I'm not a hardware expert. That just led me into to take that one photo, but I'm not a data center expert. Ask me again in a few months. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Fair enough. Thank you. Have another applause for Martin. And this is your present. Our wonderful little bags and the towel.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.